I've been thinking about the concept of why cars overheat or what causes them to overheat today, and I've been thinking about it because I've had a history of my car overheating. Now it doesn't, it seems to run cold. My dad's car keeps overheating, and well, yeah, we never really fixed the problems, even though we fixed everything we thought we could fix. So I'm here to tell you about my situation and how I identified one of the causes for my problems at its point of origin, essentially, or something along the lines of where it actually was. So we can go and we can look at every single thing that can go wrong on a car. You can talk about every single thing that can cause your car to overheat. The number one thing that caused my car to overheat was injectors. Now, it doesn't make sense because there is nothing that people are saying, oh, why, your engine overheats because of fuel injectors being blocked. But it seems to have a correlation with fuel consumption for some reason, which doesn't make any sense. And the information just doesn't tell you enough. And I do have a concept in my mind of potentially what's going on, and it's thinking about how the deterioration affects your fuel injection. So you're essentially going to be putting out the same amount of fuel that you normally do, but you're not spreading it out. It's not like a spray anymore. It's more like turning on the tap. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's about a constant spray or a constant stream instead of a psh, it's like a constant stream. So your fuel can't burn it because it's not a mist. You can't burn your fuel because it's not a mist. And why I'm talking about this now is because my car now runs cold. It's the coldest I've ever seen my car run, and it seemed to be the thing that I feel solved my problems on my car a while ago when I was overheating it and cooking it still. That was the very last thing I was thinking about. I rebuilt my injectors, put them back in, added an additive to the system, and I didn't see a problem with overheating for a very long time. But I still had some inefficiencies of the engine due to wear and tear, age, mis-servicing, or not looking after the equipment from previous ownership. But it's not necessarily just that. There is various things that can affect your performance that then have a correlation to your overheating. So what causes your engine to get hotter? When your car is under load, that is an opposing resistance on your engine that your engine has to overcome. And if it's struggling to overcome it, your heat and temperatures will rise, and your car will struggle to manage the load. So how do you get the car to move? You put your foot down harder. You put in more fuel because you're still sucking in more air, or enough air, or you have a turbo and it pushes in more air. But just because you're adding in more air and just because you're adding in more fuel does not equate to more performance. In the case of the injectors being fouled, it actually increases the temperatures. And there's a weird reason I think there is for this. They don't tell you why you have to drive your car gently. You have to drive your car gently when you're not sure about your injectors, because if you drive it hard, you're just going to raise your temperatures up really quickly because it's under a load which those injectors can't handle, that causes your engine to not have enough power to cope in certain terrain environments. Whereas on the flats, it can probably do that, but don't drive it too fast or too hard. I find 50 to 60 was about the normal operating temperature with fouled injectors. Beyond that, you'd see the temperatures rise beyond normal temperatures, and that's not good. But to get to the point of how does the fuel affect your performance, and the best way to really that I can do it without drawing it is think about it like this. You have the piston going up and down its stroke, right? And imagine you have your fuel squirting, like, you have that spray pattern. When you have that spray pattern, the fuel almost instantly burns, and your piston comes down with the forces from the combustion event. And then that combustion event is like a lot of PSI, maybe 18,000 PSI, I would think, maybe even higher than that. I have no idea, but I mean 1/8 000. So 18000. That is what I'm thinking the PSI would roughly be, but I could be wrong. It could be higher than that. And then what happens is you have that, that pressure that pushes the piston down. So what happens if you do not have a spray, but instead you have a stream? You will not get the same combustion event. Thus, your 18,000 PSI becomes lower in value. So it could be something along the lines of like 10,000 PSI, and you almost halve your performance. And I'm sorry, but I'm literally getting sick of that little bit of hair getting in my face like that. It's tickling my face. It's irritating. So I'm going to put the bandana on. And this is why I wear bandanas from time to time, because when your hair long, you can't really handle having hair in your face when you're working. And it tickles your nose that much. It's annoying. So, yeah. Now, I don't remember where it was, but essentially the stream won't have the same combustion event because it will be burning the fuel over a longer period of time. It will take longer to burn the fuel with the same quantity of fuel, but it's more condensed. Whereas if you have a spray, it will take less time to burn it, thus you'll have the efficiency sooner and be able to burn it right away, essentially. And you'll get a better performance out of your engine. So, the moral of this story essentially is if you don't look after your fuel injection system, you will not have the ideal fuel mist that you require in order to have the combustion event occur at the correct point in time for the correct duration. If your piston is all the way down at the bottom of the stroke and you're still burning that fuel off and trying to still build pressure, the piston still has to overcome whatever pressure is still building up in the cylinder, which is not efficient at all if it's doing that. Now, I don't know personally for certain because there's not enough information to tell me, but that's an assumption that I'm making, that you could still be burning the fuel as the piston's coming back up, creating more resistance, and you lose your efficiency. And that could also increase load on the engine and also increase, the heat because you're generating more heat now. And I would guess that potentially be part of the reason why you might have bad performance in your engine. Now, there was something I read somewhere earlier, not today, but a few days ago, about how more boost does not equate to more power. It's a thing where your engine has this efficiency where you can have so much boost, but there's only a certain point in which your engine is efficient with the extra boost. And my guess on that would be more fuel keeps the engine cooler, but then adding more air to that same mixture of fuel increases your EGTs and raises the heat. Because if we think about old school cars with their naturally aspirated, being naturally aspirated essentially, we get a result of essentially there's more fuel being burned and more fuel going into the engine, and they tend to be a little bit potentially cooler. They don't normally overheat as much from what I can recall. And they're mostly unleaded, whereas mine's a diesel, so it's a bit more sensitive because the fuel is not as easy to burn, and it only really burns in compressed environments easily and high temperatures as well. Whereas a petrol only really operates in super hot environments, which are between what you get for a diesel and a petrol, but high compression, high heat, and by spark ignition. So the difference in compressions are to make it so that the diesel ignites at that pressure versus a unleaded fuel or petrol igniting at a lower compression, because you can control it then. Whereas otherwise you have this really random thing where it could have the explosion at a random temperature which you can't control, and then you have detonation. So it's not really 100% clear why fuel, what the correlations is, because even though we can guess, no one is really putting out those sort of information clearly that we can read and be like, this is why, this is the correlation between, fuel and heat sort of thing. Like more fuel equals more heat. So with my car, I had multiple different issues causing overheating on my car, and I didn't know. So I'm not going to say thermostat because I don't believe the thermostat ever was involved. But I had head gasket issues, and I also had a issue with head studs, but I don't think that was a problem. I think it was head gasket issues. I had a warped head, a bit of a warped block, so warped surfaces I'll call it instead. I had a damaged turbocharger that wasn't operating efficiently and was actually generating more heat by spinning because its friction, metal on metal, was causing it to, heat it up more, and then that heat had to go somewhere. It went straight into the cooling system because the cooling system was integrated into the turbocharger. We had the injectors as well, and we had a bad diaphragm for the turbo actuator. So there's about 5 things that I could say potentially would cause, my head gasket to fail and cause the engine to overheat. So head gasket is basically your cooling system, and then all the other things are own independent things to really consider. It's hard to remember exactly what I just said, but I think people can easily make notes of what I've said, write it down, do whatever they want with it. But I feel like the important thing to know is not to just make an assumption. Go and check what things are wrong with your car, because it can even be timing. I've never had a problem with the timing being out on my car, but with Dad's car currently, he had it previously like 15 degrees out from what it should have been, because when he was timing it, it said it was timed, it said like 7 or 8 degrees, but every time he tried to change the timing and get it right, the timing occasionally didn't move at all, because there's the computer advances timing sometimes, so it made it tricky, and you had to do a certain thing in order to time that engine. So it was a bit of a frustrating thing to have to deal with. Dad's car recently has overheated and cooked quite a few times after fixing those timing issues, and he now wants to pull the engine apart. He wants me to do it for free and do it for nothing, and he wants to pick on me at the same time. His car currently seems to have an external coolant leak, but it also seems to have maybe a compression leak. But I have a compression leak tester, and it's not working. The liquid is literally blue, maybe a little bit green, but never going to yellow, which is what it's meant to do if there's a compression leak. And it's not detecting the compression leak. And a few of the tests I've done with that test in that same engine, what happened was it sucked in the coolant. Oh no. Tired. That's not fun. But a couple of times it sucked in the coolant when you're doing the compression test thingy, my bobbo. And that's probably because of the air in the system is pushing the water up. And then it gets up to the height of your tool, and you're still squeezing that thingy, and then it just sucks in the water, which is not good. In Dad's case and scenario, I would not rush to pull off the heads, and there's a reason why it's not always a good idea, and there's a reason I'm also saying this on top of this video, because even though this is about engine overheating, this is an important thing about costs. If you really can't afford to, this is from learning, this is from experience, if you really can't afford to pay the price to start the job and finish it, don't do it. I promise you it's a bad idea, and it's a better idea in that case scenario where you don't have a strong budget to then go with cheaper alternatives. Do things as cheaply as you can for the time being. Know what the cost of a job is going to cost before you do it. And then once you get to that point where you could afford to do the job, make sure you have enough of a budget to finish the job. Don't just start it and then just be like, I can't finish it, I don't have enough cash. I need to borrow someone's car for a week or something. Try to make sure you have the cash to get the job done. So in my dad's case, he needs for his specific car up to about $1,460 something. That includes all your head gaskets, your rocker cover gaskets, the valley gaskets, Let's see, what else? Did I say head gaskets? Because I think that's in there somewhere, but I can't remember if I said head gaskets. He would need it for coolant, because coolant's going to be affected. He might want to service the car, but we're not talking about servicing the car, because he doesn't look after it anyway, and I'm not going to worry about it. It's his job and responsibility. He doesn't pay me, so I have to do everything for free, and I have my own expense, which is just ridiculous and annoying. What else is there on top of all that? And then he potentially, at the end of the day, even though he could machine those heads, if he gets it wrong, he'll have to do the job all over again. He might even cook both heads if he does one but not the other, and there's a problem with the other, and he doesn't know where the problem is. He can't fix it properly. But he might also have heads that are that badly overheated that the hardness of those heads are now soft. And if they're soft heads, what will happen is it's like this. Think about it like this. Here is a pen. I can't, well, we're putting a load on it here with my thumbs. Nothing happens. I get a piece of paper, right? This represents a hard surface. I can't bend it. This represents a soft surface. If I get my thumbs and push up, that's what happens. Okay, and that's how you sort of get an idea of warp. I get this, this card right here, right? Same thing. I can push it with my thumbs, and then you get the distortion and the warping with a soft surface. And don't think it's just the surface of the material that is hard. It's literally into the depth of the material. Even if they do just a surface hardness, it doesn't matter. The hardness is not just the surface of the material, but it's throughout the entirety of the piece of material that you're handling. So if your head has been cooked, you might want to go and rebuild the head in one of multiple ways. Either you buy a new head, which is the most expensive way, and I'd think to go for the cheapest route first, or consider the cheapest route first. So pull it apart, check all your parts out, and make sure that most of the stuff that you have is reusable and in good nick, essentially. That'd be one of the very first things you'd do. Once you've consolidated all your good parts, work out what you need, and then go get your quote on how much these parts are going to cost. From there, you order the shell for your head, and you rebuild it yourself. It is the cheapest viable way for someone with nearly no money to do the job themselves. But if you have a mechanic do it, they would probably advise getting just a full brand new head. They could rebuild your head, but they might charge you an exponential amount, which is ridiculous, and say it's cheaper to just buy a new head at that point in time, and makes their life a little bit easier. They don't have to do as much work on your head, and they just bolt it back on your engine, and bada bing, bada boom, done. They'll save you money in one way, but you'll lose in another, potentially, who knows. But a newer head is better than an older head, essentially. That's all I can guarantee there. Now, the thing about the head and the block is you have two different surfaces still. If the block warps, which is unlikely with cast iron, but with an aluminum block, if it warps, you're going to have some issues there with it being warped. And if your block has been cooked and it's an aluminum block, then you're in even bigger trouble, because two aluminum surfaces with overheating issues and having that softness to them, then they don't have the strength to really hold that surface pressure anymore. So you're at a point in time with an aluminum block where you probably just need a new engine. Don't take chances with aluminum. With a cast iron block, yeah, you can take plenty of chances with it. You have plenty of ways to compensate with a cast iron block. My engines are cast iron, Dad's engine's cast iron. I have no idea if my mum's is cast iron or not, and I think my brother's might be cast iron, because they fall to love cast iron blocks, but I think everyone's moving towards aluminum blocks just because multiple different reasons with the performance, the weight reduction, and so on and so forth, and how they can get more performance out of them for various reasons, and the thermal conductivity of them. the thing is, they're probably a bigger expense in the end when you really need to replace them or repair them or something that is higher cost than cast iron. But I think in some cases, aluminum could and potentially could be more repairable if the block is still hard and say you get a crack through the side. You could, heat it up to a certain temperature, maybe weld it and then be done with it. You can do that with cast iron too, but you've got to machine and drill into the material and clean it up and then fill it in with the rods and weld it all up properly, or else the crack is going to reoccur, and you have to make sure that you have that heat change the material in a certain way that it's not too much tension that's pulling it apart, and there's already a material there. So, like, you have this, and if you have stress there, a stress point, a high stress point, and the heat expands and tries to pull it apart, it's like having, the cap at the end of here, at the end of the pen, or the cap there, or and trying to find something that falls apart when you pull it apart, or maybe even a peg. Maybe I can do it with a peg, I have no idea, but it's like that essentially. You have the peg, and this function where these two bits fall apart is like, that's your crack. So here's welded. What it might do when it's welded, it looks like a peg. Okay, the block looks like a block, but when you have that tension on it, it's already got tension on it. If you don't release that tension, what's going to happen is, with more tension, as the tension increases, it breaks, it cracks again. It doesn't look like a peg, or it doesn't look like a block anymore, and then you just have to go and weld it back up again. There's lots of little details. Okay, it's not like a simple thing I can easily just throw and spit out quite clearly, because to me, all these jobs and all these little things are very, very important, that people might not believe they're important. People want me to get to the point that, oh, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. But I feel like that, in my eyes, there's all this information that is so important because of how things are. I buy a block, it cracks. I haven't actually fixed one because I don't have the tools to do it, but your heating can do various different things, okay? I think I've made this video way too long, and I've gone off topic quite a bit from what it initially was, but it's still related to cars, so I think that's a good thing. The bad thing is it's off topic a lot. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this helps someone out there in regards to the overheating of engines, not relating to the cracks in blocks and stuff and whatnot. Forget that. You don't have to forget it. It's up to you whether you want to take on any of that on board or not, but I think the overheating stuff is the more important stuff to be considerate of, because if that's what you're looking for, an overheating issue, just remember, there's also timing. You got timing, you've got your fuel system, you got your air, and then you've got all the systems connected to your cooling system, and then you have your surfaces, and so on and so forth from that, I guess. Take care, everyone. Michael the Mechanical, out.